Today I speak with Shahryn Azmi, former CEO of CDC Malaysia and currently co-founder of MakeTimePay, a platform designed to help provide income opportunities on a gig basis to individuals of all industries. The idea came about from a desire to help underemployment after a chance encounter with a retired accountant during the COVID lockdown period. While he was at CDC Malaysia, he was tasked by Khazanah to do the unenviable job of restructuring some of the biggest GLCs in Malaysia. And the biggest task he had at that time was actually Malaysia Airlines. We talked about the examples of how some of these employees who were laid off showed resilience and tenacity despite the circumstances surrounding the airline at that point of time. MakeTimePay, in my own terms, is like a Grab for gig workers of all shapes and forms. You'll find gig offerings from full-stack software developers to bookkeeping and even copywriting. It wants to offer potentially anyone with the possibility of earning supplemental income on an on-demand basis as and when required. They're currently on an expansion plan to grow regionally and are looking for potential partners to help them expand. Enjoy my conversation with Shahryn Azmi. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the VUCA Insights podcast, where we bring you guests that talk about entrepreneurship, investing, and growth mindset. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Shahryn Azmi. He has a very interesting background, but I'll need to hold the horses there. And he's also kindly let me use his facility as the venue for this podcast. So thank you so much for coming on the show, Shahryn.
No, my pleasure, John. Thank you very much for asking me.
Yeah. Shahryn is actually the co-founder of a startup called MakeTimePay. I thought the name was pretty... I thought you were selling watches, though, to be honest.
That's all right.
Yeah. And it has a very interesting philosophy. But before we get to that story, I do want to explore Shahryn's background and how he got to where it is and how he started MakeTimePay. And it's ironic because you told me that you were actually even a police officer. So, can you probably start from there and then we'll mesh our way through somehow?
No. I mean, I think that I'll start with statistical data because I think that actually puts into context, not me because I'm really in the greater scheme of things nothing.
Okay.
But you look at this. In 2005, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, they actually produced a study, and it showed that the average American changes career an average 7 times in their working life.
Interesting.
So in 2008, the Prime Minister said, stop quoting American statistics. What's the Malaysian number? We didn't know. So we were given the funds to actually do that research. And in 2008, we discovered that the average Malaysian changes career in their working life 2.98 times. Now, that was 2008. This is now 2023. I fully believe that number is 3 point something. We look at the COVID and so on. It has to have increased. What that is basically saying is, in a person's life, their changes of career exceed 3 times. Now, what is a change of career? A change of career will take somebody who was a medical doctor, became a politician, right? That person, that is a 90-degree change. When you look at that, that was only one change. So if the doctor was in a hospital, went to a medical center, went to a clinic, he's basically still a doctor, okay? But you want to look at this. Now, the reason I say this is when you look at whether it's your listeners or you're looking at the average person and you say, are you still doing what you studied? The chances are, I would say, in 80% of cases, they will say, no, I am not doing what I studied. So how many times have you changed? And they're very likely to have said at least 2 or 3 times. So Malaysians love to ask you the question, hi, John, how are you? Have you eaten? All right, this is a classic question. Then the next thing they say, what are you doing now? All right? It's not that they forgot. They're actually curious because their expectation is that you change. So I have in my life, I've lost track, but maybe I have changed career 8, 9 times. But I don't think that that is either unusual or necessarily bad. I think now, particularly with conditions and everything moving forward in the world, people are going to be changing career and they have to be ready to change career, be allowed to change career. And the World Economic Forum says that our children, I have 3, but our children will be working in jobs that do not currently exist. So that being the case, how can you say, well, this is the best thing for you to study, this is the best thing for you to do? The answer is you could do anything, because you will change. What you need to be able to do is give people the opportunity to change and to actually make a good living doing so. So that is the thing. I think my journey, I've been in technology, I was in oil and gas, I was in defense, I was in consulting, I've been in health, pharmaceutical research. I've done a lot of things, and it was always about being, if I would say, bold enough or stupid enough to never say no to an opportunity that came up. I did all of those things, and it's been wonderful. I've loved it and loved every step of the way. But as a result, I fully believe that you should have that opportunity. I would ask you, you're still a young guy, but when you got out of university and you started your first job, did you ever think that you would be organizing a podcast? Would you have a YouTube? Exactly. No. So that being the case, since you cannot see that you were going to do that, but you've been open to doing it, and you've opened yourself to saying, yeah, why don't I do this? And then you become a marketer, you become a broadcaster, you become a journalist, you become all these things. Wonderful. And that's the whole point, right? Just do it.
I like the energy in which and the manner in which you said that is because, as maybe Asian parents, you know where this is leading, right? It's like, especially in the Chinese family. I don't know whether it happens in the Malay family or Indian family or other races, but when you tell your parents back then, the 1980s or the 1990s, Daddy, I want to go study music. They probably take a thermometer and they're like, "You're having a fever?" It's like, "Are you serious? Can you really make money?" Sure. And you just highlighted the fact that you've been through so much changes. It kind of goes against the grain of a lot of Asian perception. I would say it's not a belief; it's more of a perception that careers last forever. Only prestigious careers make money and things like that. And perhaps the fact that you've changed so much, maybe was there any point in life that you saw it was a catalyst for you to do that? Like you were sharing with me prior to recording this that you were a PA to the second in command in the tech company that you're working with, and then you were seeing the HR handing letters over the weekend to what do you call it, to lay people off, and you got it into the second round, right? That you were laid off. Were these events kind of like the catalyst for you to say, hey, job stability isn't a thing, I should always be open to opportunities? Or did that realization happen earlier on actually?
Yeah. It took me years to actually sit and think about this, but to be very honest, what the key event was actually my father passing away. My father died when I was in university.
I see. Sorry to hear that.
It's been 40 odd years. But what it forced me to do was to consider that, okay, no funding, committed to go to graduate school. What am I going to do? So you start to follow the money. So with thanks to my first employer, which was a tech company, they said, we will pay for you, we will employ you, but you can go to graduate school at the same time, but you have to work at the same time. And it was great because so I juggled both because there was not a choice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone. That company, though, the tech industry crashed, and as you mentioned just now, I got laid off together with 4,000 other people. Then you start saying, okay, how do I continue to pay for another year of graduate school? So you look to do something else, and then all along the way you keep looking to say whatever comes your way to keep doing this. You do. So if I were to say, it's not planned, it's not. Today, if you were to sit down with a executive coach. You talked about your coach. You talk to all sorts of people. They talk about having a plan for your career and everything else. There's a wonderful Irish saying, and the Irish say, if you want to see God laugh, tell him you have a plan. Okay.
I love that.
Which is so you look at this as well. This is my plan, and you know the best laid plans just basically go down the toilet. So I think each step of the way, as things happen, in my working life, I was just doing. I don't know why I did this, but I did a tally. I have been on the receiving end of 2 industry turndowns. Tech and oil and gas. I was working in Houston on Monday. I started work on Monday. The price of oil, don't laugh, was $20 a barrel.
Oh, those days.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah.
It was $20 a barrel on Monday. By Friday, it was 10. Okay, don't worry about the value, but it was a 50% reduction, with the result that, you know, the whole city of Houston was devastated and took 30 years to recover. But the company I was working for, a subsidiary of Exxon, folded. It just completely closed. So that was a second industry downturn. I have been on the receiving end of 2 mergers or acquisitions, and did not, you know, eventually did not survive either of those because I was on the acquired rather than the acquirer side. So in both cases, you can actually get cut as a result. That happened as well. And weirdly, if I were to say, while I was not a political appointee, you know, I think I was working for Khazanah. The shake-up of the Pakatan takeover in 2018 of the government, the Prime Minister came in and cut not just the managing director of Khazanah, but many of the programs under Khazanah, and so. That was a political move, and then, you know, lost my job again. So I think in all of these cases, you have to be prepared to consider what if, and you consider that you do need a plan B. I don't want to call it a side hustle, but you're always somewhat looking over your shoulder because the reality is these things can blindside you. And if you're not well prepared, I have a form of insurance, I suppose. You know, do you have insurance for your car, insurance for your house? Do you have insurance for your career? And if you don't, then, you know, bad things can happen and leave you in a bad position.
Yeah, you seem to be having a magnet for being thrown out with the bath water all the time, right? Yeah. No, I mean it's
no, I mean this. You sound like my wife. I mean I think that. Whether it's on the one hand, bad things can happen to good people, but then the question is, as we always say, you know, certainly we say this in Islam, which is one door closes, but another door opens, right? But it takes hindsight to realize that.
Yes.
Okay? When it happens to you, it's a misery, and then you go, why me? But if you actually have the belief and the faith that you go, there's a reason for this, can't see it, but it will come about, and this is why it's happening to me. Then you look back and you say, wow, thank goodness for that, because it took me down a particular path.
And you didn't put yourself on the path of a victim's mentality, because a lot of people don't get out of it. They get stuck into it. They say, why me? They go into miserable state, and they blame everyone, but don't work on finding a wiggle their way out, right? I think it's like what you said precisely. You know, in hindsight, you kind of like see it as a blessing because you got out of it. But at the same time, I think the word that, as you were narrating this, was for me was resilience. You know, it's like you didn't have a choice somewhat, right, and you usually got out of things stronger, I would say,
right,
because you build upon a muscle memory that you already like. Now you already know that if this happens, then, you know, you've got a backup plan and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that the challenge really is that for many people is exactly that, which is it's psychological. It's a mental issue. When you have no choice, I'm going to take as a saying that I understand, I believe is is a Chinese expression saying, which is, if your horse dies, you got to get down and walk.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so you need to do that. You need to realize that all of the complaining and all the whining isn't going to change very much. You just got to get on with it. And it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
I was involved with, later on with the closure of Malaysia Airlines. And one of the most memorable moments was that the airline had to downsize a married couple. They were young. They had their first baby. And the baby was several months old, and both are now out of a job. What was amazing was because they had a baby, because they were both young, because I suppose they were of a particular character, they looked at this and they said, we just need to move on. There was no, moaning, groaning. I'm sure there was. I mean, there had to be moments when they were, but they looked at this and said, we are not going to benefit from the moaning and the groaning and the whining. Help us get out of this because we can't afford it. Both the parents are out of a job, and they have a baby and they need to move on. That is a classic case of horse died, got to get down and walk. And so the heartache, the emotional reaction to being cut by their employer comes later. But right now, don't have time for this. It's a luxury that they could not afford.
Yeah.
And I always remembered that because some people couldn't pull out of that spin. They were in that.
Did you, if you don't mind me asking, were there in a way hostile situations where it got a little bit out of hand, that they were like, because in a way you were the message deliverer, even though you was the guy there strategizing the whole layoff and what, but were there situations where it turned a little bit more hostile and they like blamed you, and how do you get out of it, if you don't mind me asking? Just being a little bit kipo here.
No. I think that just historically look at this. What actually happened was that the Malaysia Airlines was in dire straits, and what the plan to do was to close the ailing company and create a new one.
PNB, right? That one.
Yeah. So this would have been Malaysia Airlines Group.
Okay.
Yeah. But what was decided then was by closing one airline, you had to let everybody go. Then the new airline would actually hire back only a portion of the people. So 20,000 people were let go, and possibly, X thousand, 12,000 or so may make it across, or 7,000. The numbers went back and forth a lot. And everybody understood that. But I think inevitably there's a fair bit of denial in the sense that, it wouldn't happen to me, cannot I have a critical job and so on. But in the end, a lot of people were impacted. A very good, amazingly good package, compensation package was created for them. But that doesn't save them from the pain, emotional suffering of getting cut by your parent, really. People had a particular view, never thought it would happen to them. So eventually they were let go. That actual event was via hard copy given to them by the airline. The airline actually gave them that.
Okay.
My team's role was actually to assist people in now what? Okay, now what?
Transition.
A transition. That's exactly it. So their options were to, obviously move on to new employment, move on to start a business of some sort, whether it's a business or you become an independent contractor. That's another possibility. Retiring, thankfully, I would say very few people did that because they were too young. They just didn't see any point in it. So most people either went on to a new company or otherwise. So I don't know that there was anger at us. I will say that of all the thousands of people we came across, we did not encounter it. But there were parties outside who were unrelated to the event making noise. All right, so they
bystanders.
People outside, onlookers and so on, that I think threw more stones than people within. The people within could see that. The first employee who got laid off was actually the CEO. And the second person who left was his driver, who left with him. Though he was not impacted, he actually chose to go with his boss.
I see.
And not stay on. So
this was the time of
AJ.
AJ, yeah.
So and he was the first to go, and very unfortunate, because none of that was his fault, if there is fault, but inevitably as the top guy, he left first.
Understood. So just to give the audience some context, I think Malaysia Airlines really had for the lack of a better word, a tumultuous past. I think, correct my fact, because you would know the situation better. I think they were bleeding money. Then they brought in Dato Sri Idris, I think, first, right? Then only came, I think there was some Mat Saleh CEOs in between, right? If I'm not mistaken. Was it before Idris Jala's time or after?
After.
I was after, right? And then it ended up with AJ. I hope I got the chronology right, because I was like following Idris Jala, then some Mat Saleh guys, and then it was AJ, and then this Pakatan transition 2018, that's where time went, and then now it's this Captain Isham, if I'm not mistaken. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's I think that was 2015 until now, so it's been 8 years and a lot of changes in those 8 years.
Yeah.
Idris was appointed, Idris does not come from an aviation background.
That's right.
I tend to, if I would say, I tend to think I'm a fairly smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned in my years associated with that endeavor was, no matter how smart I might think I am, I could never have been head of Malaysia Airlines or an airline, because there are so many aspects of the industry which, if you don't understand it, you are likely to make really bad decisions. So an aviation specialist is important.
Yeah.
And we have that now. Captain Idham is a really good guy, and I'm a big fan of his. He's a good guy, but he has a very tough job. So Idris, though, was given a very simple brief, and his brief was return the airline to profitability, but he was not told how. So one of the famous things that he did was, of course, sell the building. By selling the HQ, he had a massive injection of funds.
But it's only one off.
You need to tell him that. Okay, so then instantly books returned to the black, and everybody said, oh, hero. I think that was very short-sighted to look at that, because I think there was an opportunity to do more. But I think that the bleed was quite severe and needed. AJ was in the hot seat when two things happened which were not his fault. The loss of the plane, which is still missing, and the shooting down of another. It's just unbelievable, and neither one was his fault. But as the captain of the ship, you sit there and these things happen. After AJ, then we had a couple of non-Malaysians come in to manage, and they were not bad decisions in the sense that they were veterans of.
They were veterans
industry.
of the industry, yes.
For whatever reason, they decided to take it on. Whatever reason they chose not to stay, doesn't matter. But I think that they're gone. Peter Bellew eventually left, and now Captain Idham took over. And I think that it's where it needs to be with the leadership that it has. And I think that it's going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment, but COVID also was nobody's fault.
Yeah.
That blindsided the world. I mean,
not
you
just
look
them, like Singapore Airlines, Cathay Pacific, everyone.
Absolutely got hammered. So I think this is just a really, really tough patch. But we love our airline, and I think that there is every likelihood it will pull through.
Yeah, I pray and hope that is the case as well. I mean, I was flying when the pride of the fleet was 747, they were like 5 stars. I would even argue close to 6-star kind of airline, and where it is today, it's kind of sad, to be honest. But it is what it is, and I think the transition he has gone through, as you rightly pointed out, is I'm an aviation nut, right? As I shared with you before the podcast, and like even sometimes the choice of the planes they buy bewilders me, because it's like, if you look at low-cost airlines, they try to maintain a standardization of the fleet for maintenance and all that. And here they have dabbling with Airbuses and Boeings and, the mix and match. And I was trying to figure it out, to be honest. But long to short, even though I'm an aviation nut, it doesn't give me the right, because I wasn't from the industry. But at the same time, perhaps the messaging could be clearer.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
A couple of things that strike me, at the time going back, you remember that the world was enamored of the Airbus A380.
Correct.
And everybody loved them because they were
Huge.
They're huge and all this kind of stuff. But then discovered very quickly that they were fuel guzzlers and they were totally uneconomical to maintain. And airlines started to get rid of them. The two companies that continue to fly them is Emirates is one, and
Yeah.
Emirates love the A380s.
They can fill them up, it's fine.
And the other one is Singapore Airlines. But everybody else, they have one or two, and they're rapidly trying to get rid of them. But they aren't selling anymore, and they are not making anymore. Malaysia Airlines had either
6, I think,
Yeah.
total.
And what was amazing was that there was discussion about why aren't they sold. And this came at a time when we were already looking at, cutting 12,000 people from the 20,000. And this is one of those things where I say that, if you don't know, you don't know. And selling the 6 A380s would have meant cutting an additional 3,000 people.
Wow.
And you go, how is that possible? Well, an A380 runs 2 crews. It doesn't
Yes.
run 1 crew.
Precisely.
And then we fly what's called point to point. That means A to B, B to A to B, B to A, which is constantly back and forth. So you're having multiple crews at point A, multiple crews at point B. Then you've got all the guys who are doing the simulators. You've got all the aircraft engineers. You've got all this kind of stuff. And it's mind-boggling that you would be running 6 aircraft and 500, people per plane, and you go like, how does that even work? And that's one of the things which is very, very complicated. And I think that eventually it's just way too difficult, I think, to manage out of it. But they're doing their best, and I think right now, as we tend to say, but just. Be a little
If I correct my what I've read so far is that they're trying to fill it up for Hajj planes, which is like bulk, which is good in a way, because as what you just said, people usually think of the first order impact, but you've just described a classic example of second, third order impacts. Because can you imagine if you because airports have to be modified to take it in,
Right.
Aero bridges have to modify to be taken it in, right? Then you've got catering lorries to be able to hit that kind of height, right? So it's like
Absolutely.
yeah.
So people don't think about that. We think in very simple.
Yeah.
2 + 2 therefore equals 4. Not quite so simple when
Yeah.
you're looking at a very complex issue like aviation. Aviation is very complex.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like look at even low-cost carriers. I mean, like Asia. Tony has done a fantastic job, but he had like aviation specialists surrounding him because he's from the music industry, right? Yeah. So again, like what I think I'll end that part with like saying that sometimes we need to take a step back and consider multiple second, third order effects and really look at a specialist rather than just surface. Then, while you were let go because of this change of government and all that kind of thing, and you decided, hey, you want to take a breather, right? It's like after all this tumultuous, it's like how many different career paths, how many different industries, and here I said, okay, time for me to get a break, right? And share with us the story of how you came about MakeTimePay, and then it was probably in this living room as well.
It was. Let's see. You have to put this into context where the decision was made that we would close the Khazanah unit, which was called CDC. The euphemism was the Corporate Development Corporation, CDC. And ironically, in 2020, that was also the start of COVID. So you had another CDC, which was the US Centers for Disease Control. Okay.
Yeah.
So what became really problematic was that not only was my CDC closing, but also we were in the midst of the first wave of COVID. And it was, it's just, the world was impacted. One of the things that I felt as we closed this very important business that we had, and our role essentially was to assist Khazanah-linked companies. This is, in other words, state-owned enterprises in which the Sovereign Wealth Fund had a substantial stake. Our role was to assist them in resizing and to help their impacted staff land well. That was the goal. So when we closed by the time we had closed in 2020, we had already assisted in excess of 35,000 people. And I like to think, we're not, I say we're not firemen, we're not doctors, but, we saved lives. It made a huge difference that we were involved in helping people who had lost their primary job, their sole job, move on and be okay. So that was the thing. But I felt that because I didn't resign and the government forced the closure of the unit, I felt my mission wasn't complete. It wasn't just me that got out. I mean, my whole team of 40-odd people, all of us were out. But, I felt that certainly there was more that needed to get done. The need is very real. And what I then decided to do was something in that line. But the business that the company had been in, CDC had been in, which was assisting with career transition, downsizing, resizing, is a really nasty, cruel business. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that anymore. I was here noodling the ideas with a couple of friends of mine, and we ordered food from one of the food delivery services, and ding dong, I went out to get the food, and there was I would say elderly gentleman, elderly in the sense that he had a complete head of white hair, and certainly old enough for me to call him uncle, that type of person. And he was delivering food for the three of us. And I saw that he had a very nice car. Wouldn't say it was new, but certainly good condition and a nice brand and everything. So I said, Uncle, just ask you a question, like, why are you delivering? I'm delivering food, And he said that both his children had lost their jobs because of COVID and everything else. And he was helping, put some money into the kitty by delivering food. And I said, but, there must be something else you can do. And he said he had been an accountant for 40 years, but given that he was 60 and he looked like, an old man, nobody was prepared to hire him. They just said felt he was too old. And if you're not familiar with the concept, it's called ageism. And ageism is like racism except with age. It's bad.
Discrimination
it's
based
discrimination,
on age.
Yeah. It's if you don't like racism, then you shouldn't like ageism, and yet people do it. So I was quite affected by that idea that he was prepared to work, he had qualifications, he had experience, but he didn't have access to the opportunity to do so, and instead was earning 2 or 3 ringgit per delivery, well below his potential. So to cut a long story short, we decided, my partners and I, we said, okay, here's what we need to do. we're going to create a means to connect both the labor supply and the labor opportunities. And that was something where, of course, there are recruiting agencies, there are staffing agencies, there are a range of possibilities. What you don't have in Malaysia, and we are the only one, is we are a marketplace. And a marketplace basically allows both parties, the supply as well as the demand, to find each other without the involvement of consultants. What's wrong with consultants? Nothing wrong with consultants, but the consultants have a tendency to make things much more expensive and to really slow things down. If you are searching for a particular type of person, arguably, all right? So if you're looking for a CEO, there are headhunters which only do CEOs. And that's great. I have, there's no issue with that. But for the bulk of the population, which is 99.9%, which are not looking for CEO positions, they want to be able to look at all the opportunity, and companies want to look at this. And so the ones who are not prepared to make the effort, they engage a staffing firm, a recruitment or whatever, to help them, when in fact they could actually be doing this themselves. So we created the marketplace, and I would say, to borrow Lazada or a Shopee or an eBay, except for employment. Okay, so by doing this, you know how easy it is. You press some buttons, and instantly you have a toaster, or you press some buttons and instantly you have a microphone, whichever it is. It needs to be that simple, and when it is that simple, you will do it. And this is the thing where people need to find the opportunity and companies need to find them. Well, why shouldn't organizations use the current means? Well, right now you have a couple of things which are very dominant in the market. One, which is what we call silos. A silo basically there is a portal that is specifically for tech. There's a portal specifically for the creative professionals. There's one even for university students looking for a side hustle, which is great. But after 3 years or 4 years, they're not university students anymore. Do you kick them out? I mean, what happens, right? There's a portal which it was created by a former colleague of mine for young professionals, which I love. It's wonderful. And I say, I'm a professional, but I'm not young, so I'm not eligible. So somebody must have heard me because they created one for old professionals, right? So you look at all these are all portals where you are looking for an opportunity, an income opportunity. You go, which one? Where do I belong? If you are looking for a worker, where do you go? So what you do is you default to generic possibilities, when in fact all apply. What you want to do is just to be able to find and allow the technology to do this, which is why you're looking for a toaster, you're looking for a hairdryer, you're looking for a pair of shoes or a t-shirt, you go to the same shopping portal. So why shouldn't you do that in the same thing with the marketplace? Now, what was very interesting when we first started, which was when we first started the launch, which was in the early in Q1 of 2021, was we looked at this and we were getting people registering who were unemployed. Well, it's COVID, of course they're unemployed, right? So this is what was happening. And it was Q1 of 22. And what was happening was post-COVID, people were unemployed, looking for income opportunities, jobs. What has happened now is that 100% of people who are registering are employed. And why is that? And the reason is because they are not earning enough. They've all gone to their bosses, their companies, and said, please pay me more. I can't handle the rising prices. I can't handle the commitments. Please pay me more. And the companies have all said, cannot. If I pay you more, I'm going to pay everybody more. Okay. And so, sorry, cannot. Now, these people are not resigning, but what they're doing is they're saying, I need supplemental income. But you know what? I'm a finance professional. I'm a marketing professional. I'm a something. I should not be delivering food. Not because there's anything wrong with delivering food, but because I wouldn't be earning what I could earn.
It's not optimal income.
Yeah, it's not. It's underemployment. Okay, so I'm not slamming people who deliver food. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you have, like that uncle, 40 years as an accountant, he could do better than earning 3 to 4 ringgit a delivery, 2 deliveries an hour, 8 ringgit an hour. It doesn't make sense, right? It's a nonsense. So he could do better, because there will be firms that will say, you know what, We don't want a full-time accountant. We don't want a senior accountant. We can't add to our headcount. We can't add to our fixed overheads. But you know what? We need some help with audit this week. We need some help with, the numbers for a month or whatever, or for a day. We're prepared to take that help. Yes, you can go to your auditor, your accounting firm, whatever. We're going to charge you an arm and a leg, right? Nothing wrong with that. But you want to save money because economic conditions, business conditions. So you can take this person. All you need to do is be sure that the person can do the job. If they can do the job, then you do this, right? You're not surrendering control. You are getting input, and you're doing it at a much lower cost. All win. The company wins by managing their costs. The person wins by doing better than delivering food, and everybody's really happy. So there's nothing wrong with that. So what we do is we just connect through, a form of superhighway, connect both the demand and the supply through a marketplace. So that is really why we exist.
Okay, great. I've got tons of questions leading from that. Okay, first one has always been like, so because you use quite aptly the example of a Lazada and Shopee. So there's always a merchant side.
Sure.
And there's always a customer side. So in this case, the merchant would be, ironically, the reverse. The merchants would be the people offering their jobs and services, which is like the uncle mentioned in your case, accounting professional, 40 years, may even be qualified as a CFO or to guide a CFO in waiting, right?
Yep.
These guys are the merchants, right? They're offering. The customers would be the guys who are like, hey, I need some gig worker, and we talk about that term as well, because I know you have your beef on that term as well. So what is the struggle on growing the size? Because a platform it's like a honey hive, right? A beehive. Right. The bees only come when there's like a queen bee, and then there's more sugar, there's more honey, and it gets. So how do you make it attractive? Because I'm pretty sure there are struggles growing the merchants. I think you, right now, if correct me if I'm wrong, mainly word of mouth. I don't think you do much advertising now, do you? And on the customer side, I kind of guess that you are like word of mouth, one-on-one meetings, or you probably get some affiliate guys. So share me the struggles on growing this end and this end.
Yeah, I think that we've spent a fair chunk of cash actually exploring how we can actually ramp up both the number of individuals seeking opportunity as well as the companies as well. And I think that you need to put the effort into both. Once you become, a household name, then it's much easier. We found that social media is really the I wouldn't say this is a silver bullet, but certainly the way to get through to individuals. And it's a range. Different types of people look at different social media, but certainly the popular TikToks, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, those are still very dominant sources of possible interest for people to be able to look at this and say, oh, here's something. But they coming on board to register is very simple, but they also need returns. And the returns essentially are something where right now we are growing at about 300 registrations a day. We've got about 60,000 individuals registered. They are 99.9% Malaysian. Slight, because as a .com, we do pick up people from other countries. We've got about 600 companies, which is also really good, and really interesting range of companies from. You mentioned the police, the Thai embassy, retail. I mean, it's really interesting. And I think what this is actually been showing us is that the need for good people, the need for people to do something, extends across all industries, all skill sets, all ranks. And that's what we always say, all industries, all skill sets, all ranks. And so as a result, it doesn't matter what you're doing. I mean, what on earth you say, oh, Police do many things. They also need administrators. They need secretaries. They need receptionists. They don't need them to be trained to carry gun type people. That's not the need, right? They have very simple things that, they need cleaners. That is one of the things that. the Thai embassy, they don't only hire Thais, they hire Malaysians to do stuff as well, as all embassies do. So very interesting to look at all of those where they're looking at this. But we are a marketplace, and as a marketplace, it is very important for us to continue to grow both sides. So if you are looking, say for instance, as a silly example, but if you are looking for a gun, you go onto Lazada and say, oh, Lazada is useless because I can't buy guns. Like, I mean, talking about a real gun, not a toy gun.
Yeah.
It's because of the fact that it's not a saleable item under that. It just is not. They're not. But they have toys, they have all sorts of things. But they don't sell cars either. And I would say arguably not yet, all right? Because if you go onto eBay, you can actually buy a car on eBay. So you're only limited by what the law allows you to do and what people are prepared to post. And, you know, the eBays and the Amazons, you forget, they've been around a long time. You know, you're talking in excess of 20 years, not 20 months. So when you look at this and you go, how are these things possible? It's people are prepared to sell. And then the next thing you know, people are prepared to buy. And then that starts to grow. We are at the moment 100% white collar. Not because we force it that way, but because that's where the demand is coming. But what's actually happening is that creeping in is gray collar. And that is retail, hospitality, food and beverage. All of this is actually starting to creep in because that is a really difficult part of the economy where there's a lot of demand for that. So to say it's 100%, okay, so we're not 100%, maybe 99% white collar. And this creeping interest at the moment, and we talk to our retail clients, and they tell us horror stories like they will get staff who start at 10 o'clock, because that's the mall opens at 10 o'clock. 11 o'clock, they go to the toilet and they never come back.
You're kidding.
Yeah, they never come back. These people just don't come back. And then they're like, you know, what do you do with these people? And so they look at this. And the other thing about retail is that they have, for instance, a rush of business, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But Monday to Thursday, it's pretty quiet.
Yeah.
So if you are going to carry staff for 7 days, it's very costly. But if you have a skeleton staff Monday to Thursday, and then you ramp up your staff Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you actually can then deal better with your customers. So we have those kinds of clients at the moment as well.
And it makes sense because the staff who don't come on the Mondays to Thursdays, where in Chinese we say hit mosquitoes, you know. There's a Chinese direct translation. It's like you got nothing to do, then you look at the mosquitoes, and every day you're just hitting it, right? It's also flexibility for the staff because they only want to do, probably they want an extra income on those 3 days.
Correct.
They're willing to sacrifice because it's probably double the pay or what they're getting. And then on Mondays to Thursdays, they have the flexibility of doing their, you know, the full-time job or whatever. It's like what you say, it's a win-win. But
well, you know, we have seen, we are constantly doing research because you need to understand not just the market, but the kinds of people who are using your business. So one of the things that has been very interesting for us is that, as I mentioned earlier, when we first started operations in quarter 1 of 22, what we saw was people who are unemployed. And as a result, when they get an assignment, they get an opportunity, this is 100% of what they do. This is all they do because they're unemployed. What has changed now is that employed people are looking for supplemental income. The supplemental income, then, they do it, and hence our name, MakeTimePay. They're using their free time and monetizing their free time. So now the question is, what is their free time? Usually you would think, oh, after 5 o'clock is their free time until bedtime. Weekends is their free time, they do this. But companies, as we know, are allowing working from home. Working from home means that it is very likely in many cases that these people are not doing things that require constant interaction. What they've been given is assignment. We need this in a week, we need this in 2 weeks, we need this in a month, or whatever, just get it done. And you don't need to be in the office, all right? So then the person goes, okay, so what do I do? Oh, here's an income opportunity, but this income opportunity needs me during the day. So what we have seen in many cases is a reversal where people's main job, their day job, has actually flipped to become their night job.
Interesting.
And then their side hustle has become their day job because the side hustle needs them to function from 9 to 5 or whatever it is. So that is the thing. And we looked at this like, wow, okay. What's very important here is about the willingness of people to work. And what frustrates me is there's a lot of comment about how lazy people are. People are looking for the easy way out. People not prepared. No, absolutely not. I completely dispute that. People are prepared to work. What they're not prepared to do is go through a lot of the nonsense that happens that's preventing them from working.
And getting paid crap.
And getting paid insufficiently as well. You're absolutely right. So if these people are given that opportunity, then they are prepared to work. So right now, there's a lot of discussion on a daily basis, what happens with the food delivery riders, the logistics delivery people, and so on. People are not prepared to go on to tertiary education. They're prepared to chuck it in. What they want to do is just be a rider. And the people who say this don't understand the lot. They don't understand the position of these delivery people. If you go into a job interview process, in an application process, they see it as unnecessarily inflexible, arduous, difficult, BS. It's just, they look at this and it's like a lottery for them. I've applied. The company doesn't respond to my application. When I ask them, what's happening, they say, yeah, we're still processing and so on. So they're not getting the feedback and they just don't know what to do. Whereas with, I would say 100% of these delivery companies, if you walk in, you will walk out with the job. Okay, you walk out and you've got you're logged into their system, you've got the software, you can just simply switch on and they tell you, go here, pick up, go there, drop off, and you are earning. Oh, I don't feel like working tomorrow, so you don't switch your app on, you don't earn. Oh, I feel like working for an hour, you switch it on. The control over their lives is huge. And if they do this, they're looking at this going, it is a certainty. Could I be doing better? What is better? Well, right now, it's giving me money, so I don't know how much better I could be, because to look for a traditional job, I'll call it a traditional job, is hard. Can I do both simultaneously? Of course you can. What you do is you put in an application for a traditional, normal job while you're running errands, you're doing all these kinds of things. That's fine. And I have to go to an interview. You stop delivery to go to your interview. That's absolutely fine. But right now, the way it looks, the chances are you will not get that job. So you might as well continue with your delivery. And there's not an understanding of that. So we look at this and say, people are prepared to work. They get it. You work, you get money, and money helps you pay for your various commitments, your family, and so on. But they need to be connected to that opportunity. The opportunity is screaming for these people. But I think from the opportunity side, they need to make it easier for people to come on board.
I love it that I think what I took away from that statement was actually giving control back to the people.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, and I would still argue a big chunk of the employment economy is today, they feel that once I give you employment, you own them. Like I know you definitely have your pet peeve there, because I find it, to be honest, I mean, I was very lucky. I work for a multinational oil and gas company. There's no such thing as punch cards, because they trust you as an adult. You're given a task, you deliver. Obviously, if you don't deliver, there's yearly appraisals and all that kind. But they take you as an adult. Then you go to the other extreme ends where you see certain other operators and they have a punch card system. And what they do is they come in, they punch the card at 8 and they go have breakfast. And then there's a queue at 4:45 because everyone wants to punch out at 5. So in a way, when you relinquish, you don't want to relinquish control. You want to take over control. Actually, it backfires. That's one. The second point I want to make is that surprisingly, if you give them control, but you add on, you give clear lines of accountability and responsibility, people will shoulder it. People will know. The problem is, the employers themselves sometimes are not clear of what they want, and that's why there's like, I lock you in 8 hours. Every time there's an employment contract, there's always say, these are your job tasks, and then there's a last line that says, any other thing. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Any other business. Yeah.
Any other business, right? Yeah. And I kind of resent to that. That means that you couldn't figure it out, my proper job role, and then now you chuck me to do all this. But I want this to pivot into a point where, do you think it's a good thing that right now, do you see a change where there's a behavior from the employers to say that I'm more willing to pay and I'm stepping up by enhancing or defining better job scopes that pay better? Do you see that, or do you still see a lack of it?
I think it's unfortunately, it's very personal from the point of view of leadership. I think people bring their own preferences to a role, and then they start to shape their organizational culture that way. I think that some entrepreneurs are very giving and generous. I was very fortunate to work for somebody who was just incredible that way. He's passed away now, and I'll tell you that story another time. But other people are less fortunate, and they work for really, small-minded individuals, and that's very hard. I'll give a shout out to my favorite department store. It's an American company called Nordstrom, and they are famous for wonderful customer service. And I tell this story because there was an interview with the CEO of Nordstrom, and he is a Nordstrom, all right. So it's like a family thing. But he was asked in the interview, you guys have the best customer service. Everybody talks about Nordstrom. They talk about the best service. How do you train your people? How do you select them? How do you train them to be as amazing as they are? And his answer was, oh, we don't train them. Their parents do.
Wow, what perspective.
Right? It was such a fascinating thing. And there was, silence. Then somewhere else in the interview, the question was, how is it that most companies have an employee manual that, looks like 500 pages, right?
Encyclopedia Britannica.
Well, nobody knows what that is anymore. Yeah. So that's going to date you. But I was going to say phone book, which is even worse, right? So most companies have these big employee manuals that really only make lawyers rich, right? So they're massive. But why is the Nordstrom employee manual 4 sheets of paper? And his answer was, if you get to a manual that's thick, you've already lost the war. You don't want to be in a situation where you have to resort to the manual. You just simply look at this, and then you find that, you trust people, right? You trust, as you said, you trust them to do the right job. And that is just a very enlightened point of view. That is just the most amazing way to look at this. And they are profitable. They've never been in Chapter 11. They make money, and everybody loves them. The people like working for them. I mean, if I were to say, how weird is that? Yeah, how weird is that, right? So what is wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it. But I think that is an imprint of the Nordstrom leadership, where they look at this and they say, hey, hire the right people, and then you have the best jobs. And very interestingly as well, when you look at training for retail, they keep their people interested by constantly moving them around. So on Monday, you could be in mattresses. On Tuesday, you're in shoes or something like this. And they say, well, how can you do this? It's so complicated. They will never know enough about the product. You need product specialists. And they said, what you have now is that mattresses, when you go to test a mattress, there is a write-up right there. It's covered in perspex. It's in there. It tells you the size of the mattress. It tells you all sorts of things, the springs, all this kind of stuff. And people test it by sleeping on it and everything else. What does the person do? All the person does is he looks at you, or she looks at you, and says, let me assure you, this is the best sleep you will ever have. And that is not printed anywhere, right? So that's exactly all you need that person to be able to do. You don't need to know the bed is this big, this heavy. It's nonsense. Nobody cares. They just want somebody to assure them that if they spend this money, it's just going to be so worth it, right? And he said that applies to all the products. Oh, you look great in these shoes. Not so much. You want that. So this is your friend there. You don't need the person telling you about the shoes, how many stitches and all this, what cow it came from, whatever. It's irrelevant. The person is looking, because they're discriminating shoppers and everything. They just want to know, so how do I look? Do I look good? Yeah, it's like, yeah, maybe. And you want that feedback. So that's a wonderful way of looking at it. You called it trust just now. It's a very different view, and I think that you hire the right people, any company, you hire the right people, understand what your business is, and it's killer. You will do well all the time. But unfortunately, I think in a lot of cases, there's a certain mindset that forces a very restrictive set of responsibilities on people. And then people behave that way. People look at this and say, you want me there at 8 o'clock? I will be there at 8 o'clock. You know, I punch out at 5 o'clock. I will punch out at 5 o'clock. You will not get me a minute earlier or a minute later. And then in between, they work the system so that they basically force it. You know, it's like work to rule, right? And it's, I think it's unfortunate. People given the trust usually will fulfill that.
Yeah.
You will find them working late, evenings, weekends, and they're okay to do it because they know it's appreciated.
Yeah.
And I think that's not uncommon at all.
Yeah. It's interesting perspective again, especially about, I mean, I visited Nordstrom a few times, especially the one in Houston. Well, in, I think West Galleria. I think it was Galleria, right? I would like to, I wouldn't say pivot, but coming back to like MakeTimePay, it's like, how do you, was it an intended outcome that some kind of customer employment loyalty or whatsoever is being eroded? Because in a way, I'm like, you mentioned earlier about, you know, people change their careers today, and you know, during my time of my parents, it's like you get a job, you get into an MNC, and you know, you're set for life. You know, you work for like the government, then it's there's a word for it, rice bowl, iron rice bowl, right? But at the same time, is it not an unintended consequences that, hey, I don't really need to be loyal for a very, very long time, both for the employer, because there's also a I wouldn't say a stigma, but also a train of thought that, you know, they want permanent employment for the employees is because I'm going to spend time, resource, effort to train you, and then you leave, and they want to lock them in because it's like it's wasted effort. But at the same time, you've got this this marketplace that says, hey, I don't want you long time. In a way, I'm sure, right? I don't want you long time, but you have a set of skills. I'm here to match. But at the same time, you don't need to form loyalty to your employer and all that. So probably take me through your train of thought when yeah.
I think it's a fair point. I think I'll start off by saying, you know, MakeTimePay exists for the little guy. And we, you know, it is about that uncle who came by and couldn't get a job, couldn't get other work because of ageism. It's about that kind of thing, and the way to help that uncle is by helping organizations find him. All right, so that's why we exist. I think it's a fair point about the issue of loyalty. However, I will say this, a couple of things. First of all, the world has seen something which is called 4IR, or Fourth Industrial Revolution, automation, digitization. And with that, you are starting to see estimates, for instance, World Economic Forum, McKinsey Institute, and so on. We're looking at, they say, 800 million people losing their jobs by 2030 because of Fourth Industrial Revolution, automation, digitization. 800 million people. How do you get 800 million? The number is like mind-boggling. It's a crazy number. Well, if you look at from a Malaysian context, we had in April of 2017, the Plus Highway system went 100% touch and go and smart tag, electronic. So from that decision, 3,000 toll collectors were out of work. That's what happens. When you get a decision, it doesn't affect one or two people. It affects thousands of people, or in some cases, tens of thousands of people. Top Glove, the world's largest glove manufacturer, a big Malaysian company, they are listed. So they have to make certain announcement to the market. And they said, we bought a machine. I don't know how big the machine is, but they said, we bought a machine. Because we bought a machine, 2,000 people have to be laid off. well, how big is this machine? I don't know. But they talk about shifts and a different shift and how many days a week and so on. So the purchase of a single machine, and that's not even fourth industrial revolution, it's just a machine.
Yes,
right?
yes.
You look at this and you end up with that's happening. So you have all of this. I'm so sorry, it's not personal. It's very mafia, right? Bang. I'm sorry, it's not personal.
Business.
It's just purely business. Okay. So that's really, really classic. So when you look at this, yes, you don't want to be eroding that sense of loyalty or anything, but the reality is an organization will never put you first. An organization will put its own interests first, its investors, its shareholders first, raising shareholder value, all those kinds of comments. So in the end, if it's a choice between you and the organization will always come first. So if you look at this, I think that the current generation workers today understand this, which is why fewer and fewer millennials, Gen Zs are interested in permanent work. They are actually indicating that they would prefer to be on contract. They would prefer a gig. Their gig is not a 1 hour gig. They would prefer something where they do it for a few months, they do it for a year, whatever, and then they're quite happy to change. That is already a preference. That's unrelated to the establishment of MakeTimePay. What MakeTimePay has, if you look at this in terms of both loyalty and to a certain extent, I suppose, integrity, which is very much like online shopping. We have a star rating system. And the thing about the star rating system is when an individual does a good job, that means the employer, albeit a gig employer, in other words, an employment for that assignment, the employer gives them a number of stars and a rating, right? This is your TripAdvisor, this is your Yelp, whatever, right? So it gives some comment or just a star rating. However, to be fair, we do it the other way, which is then the worker also rates the employer, so that signals to other people, hey, this company is maybe not the best one to go to work for. Hey, this is a wonderful company to work for, 5 stars, right? So this and as honestly as possible, that works both ways. So you look at this, and while that is maybe not the loyalty of you to the company, you to the individual, it's certainly a higher level of integrity where you want to do the best job so that you are seen in the best light. You are your product, you are your service, and you want to be seen well. And likewise, you are your company and everything else, you want to be seen well. So that, I think, is a different type of relationship. And that puts people where they are forced to have to be civil and nice
professional, courteous.
But you may not be. You may have found that individual useless, so you will give them a 1 star or no star. And you may find this company, horrendous to work with. Same again. But you can't take it like online shopping. You can't take one rating. You actually have to look at the majority of ratings, right? And you'd say, oh, look, 500 people gave it 4.2 stars. Yep, I think this is a good one. 3 people gave it 2 stars. Okay, is that real or not?
Yeah.
It's a judgment call. It's your decision. And after all, they only need me for 5 days. Okay, I'll do it for 5 days, and then after that, I change the gig and do something else.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. Most critically, it comes back to the issue of people aren't earning enough.
Understand.
Costs are rising, and they're struggling. And because they're struggling, their option is that horrible thing, which is the loan shark. All right. And you don't want that. You don't want that to happen. So they are prepared to work, allow them to work, allow them to earn, and they do it, but earn what they are worth, and so that they're not underemployed. So that is the thing which we're hoping to be able to facilitate.
Great. I've got one pertinent question directly to the last sentence that you just mentioned.
Loan sharks.
Not so much the loan sharks. I think I can't solve world hunger, but are employers, because of this platform, are you seeing some sort of a mindset change that they said? Have you seen employers, they try to lowball the gig workers on this platform? And what do you do about it? And have you seen a positive change in which they say, I think I should pay a little bit more and I get better?
Yeah. We had one case where I won't mention the party involved, but the would-be employer was looking for a full stack developer. A full stack developer basically is a very capable tech professional.
Yeah.
Okay, but we saw this, because we're always monitoring and we have systems to be able to see this. Yes, you can see salary guides annually. A range of consultancies release them and say, this is what salaries are worth and so on, and then you work it out. But ultimately, as a marketplace, you allow both individuals to say, I'm prepared to come to work for you for peanuts, and companies to say, I'm prepared to overpay you. Okay, both happens. Okay, this is the thing. In this particular case, this would-be employer fired off a pretty stroppy note to us and complained that after a week, they had been looking for a full stack developer and couldn't find one, and basically said, you're useless, you suck, and so on. So we saw this, and we saw instantly what the problem was. They were looking to pay 3,500 ringgit a month.
For full stack developer.
For full stack developer.
And it's actually full stack pays 10 times that, 10 times actually.
Well, I don't know about 10 times, but I know that we could interest a number of people for 3 times that.
Yeah.
So when you start pushing 8, 9, 10,000, you could get a good, capable person. But at 3.5, nobody's going to take a sniff, right?
Yeah.
So what you might get is somebody who just graduated, but then they don't have the paper to back up their
no
ability.
full stack developer comes as a fresh grad. Actually.
Right.
Yeah.
So exactly.
Yeah.
So you look at this, and so we wrote to them and said, you're just not offering enough.
And what was the response? I'll be surprised.
Well, we got another outpouring of vitriol where it's like, oh, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Now, what I look at, and that is purely market sentiment. You aren't prepared to pay enough. The result is you got nobody.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, does money rule all? It doesn't. But it needs to be at least fair. And if it's fair, people will consider. But when it's very clearly silly, then what is already a scarce resource is not going to want to do this. So when you look at this, you go, okay, what else can you do? Yes, we're developing. We're developing systems where a posting like that would trigger
a flag or something.
A flag to the employer that says, thank you for this, but you know what? Right now, the average that is posted by others is X, and you are not at that level. So be aware that you will probably not get.
Fantastic.
So but technology does that. Technology looks at the label. Technology looks at the amount, and then you can trigger off a run, and a response email or an alert to the employer. But will people always want to lowball? Yes, of course they will, because they're trying to save money. But at the same time, certain organizations put their name out there and they say, we are company X. Ooh, somebody says, you know what? I hate how little they're paying, but it's only for a week. I want to put it onto my resume that I have done work for them. So this is not going to help my bank account, but it's going to be great for my resume. That is also a function of marketplace. Because the marketplace is, you chose to do this, and you say 5 days, okay lah.
Buyer willing seller.
That's exactly it, right? So do I jump in there and say, hey, this is
unfair.
This is unfair to you because you should be paid more. Well, we could, and we will. Where we say to that person, you're prepared to accept this, fine. But the next time, because it's a gig, it's 5 days, right? On day 6, if they say they want to rehire you, you better ask for more because you're getting ripped off here, all right? So that is another way of looking at this. But I think we used the word just now, grown-ups or adults.
Yeah.
You need to look at people and say, is this something you want to do? Because the company that was offering that low amount for the full stack developer is not well known. So as a result, there was no benefit other than the cash to the applicant. So if the full stack developer doesn't want to do this for 3,500, no matter how desperate they are, then they don't do it.
Yeah.
So they never got any response.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. You know, and so it's a consequence of us being a marketplace.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to dive now a little bit deeper into the back end of MakeTimePay, and I know since you're in the midst of raising money, some data may be sensitive, so do let me know what you can and what you can't reveal. How big's the team right now, roughly?
Yeah, actually very interesting. I just filled in a form last night, and the category 1 is 1 to 10 people. Category 2 is 11 to 50. So we fall into the second category.
Oh, okay, 1 to 50.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of your burn rate, whatsoever, I'm guessing it's heavily subsidized by your own money and your other co-founders' money. Have you raised any round of money before this?
We actually have revenue that actually covers, an element of the overheads, and we are raising because we believe that we are Malaysians, right? The shareholders are Malaysians, but the key really is that, with all due respect to the country, the market is small, so there's nothing wrong with only being here. But we believe that our mission is much greater. And case in point, I don't know if you know this, but Singaporeans love Malaysians. They may not say that, but they really love us. And the reason they say this is because, I always heard this anecdotally, but I think it's actually correct. They said that Singaporeans have been trained to be in the box.
Yes.
Because they are regulated, they are legislated, they are very controlled. So as a result, they can't figure out problems. Malaysians seem to always find their way how to wriggle out of everything. So they love Malaysians for their problem-solving capability. I don't know if that's a dig. I don't think so. I think it's actually quite funny. But they seem to be quite serious about hiring Malaysians for that reason. So given that, if we were able, for instance, to open across the border, you are looking at opening up all of our user base to Singapore dollar-based opportunity.
Wow.
Yes, it is not an opportunity necessarily where you have to be on site, which is okay. Remote work is completely acceptable. There is a very popular job at the moment, which is remote. Actually, it's a virtual assistant. All right. So what is a virtual assistant? That means you actually, is it your assistant, your personal assistant, your secretary, whatever. But where is this person? This person's in the Philippines. Okay? So why? Why do you have to see your assistant every day? Well, there's certain things, you can't help my in-tray, my physical in-tray, my mailbox or whatever. But nowadays, so much is electronic. In fact, it's not, mail, snail mail is not really a big part of this. So likewise, if you're looking at this and you say it's remote work, why shouldn't the user base be open to Singaporean opportunity from here? But then the reverse also happens. Singaporeans would be, but will Singaporeans do it for a Malaysian pay? Maybe, maybe not, don't know. Singapore is going through a range of dramas at the moment in employment. But then once you say that, what's stopping you to going on to the next ASEAN country and the next one and the next one? So really the opportunity for us, and I would say for Malaysian startups, which is very important, is think beyond your neighborhood and look at internationalizing. I don't think we think hard enough about internationalizing.
Absolutely.
And because we don't think of that, we think it's such a big deal that we move to Penang. Okay. It's so exciting we're in Johor. No, guys, you need to look at this beyond, because that is the theory of the net, right? We have people, I know we start joking about scams and so on. We have Nigerians, signing on. We have Middle Easterners. I have a CEO who signed on from Florida.
Wow.
And I thought that was really funny. But he was looking at doing remote advisory work because he's interested in Asia.
Yeah.
So he registered. And I said, okay, I don't know who's going to pay you, but I thought that, I didn't say it. But, so why should that not be the case? So the moment you start to do this, now, why do you have to be present? and it's really got to do with a present. We don't have to be present in these countries. We could pretend, we could try to continue as a .com, which we are. We're already getting foreign interest, but really, you're much better off with a local presence. There are companies which are in many ways competitive, I would say. There's a wonderful Australian company. It's called Freelancer. I would love the name. I would buy the name in a heartbeat. But Freelancer has been in operation as a .com and therefore reaching Malaysians for 11 years. We have been in operation a year and a half. We have 50,000 opportunities, job opportunities in a year and a half. Freelancer has been around 11 years. They've got 80.
Whoa, you're not too far off, man.
80 only.
80, not 80,000.
Not 80,000, 80. And the reason is because they're not here. Okay? All right? We are. So as a result, we got 50,000. They have 80. Not 80,000, just 80. You mentioned Fiverr. Fiverr is a wonderful company. I have all sorts of friends who use Fiverr for stuff, which is wonderful. But Fiverr's been around 9 years.
Yes.
They have 800 Malaysians. Okay? We've been around a year and a half. We have 60,000 Malaysians. You look at this. You need to be there to have that personal interest, that stake in the operation. So yeah, you don't need hundreds of people. You just need to have that presence. The other one is really about revenue. And the revenue crossing borders and everything else, you start to get into interesting situations. It's much, much better if you are able to be locally registered. It's say in Singapore, you are a .sg suffix.
Yes.
You have all this kind of things. And then you have that operation. That costs money. That costs money to be able to do this. So, we're looking at multiple markets, regional. We're looking at this. We had an interest from the Middle East, specifically the Emirates, and we're still here. So how do you do the Emirates when you're here? So we had that discussion with the investor, and the investor was saying their interest was what we do, which we can do. Of course, as a .com, we can do this. But their interest was very specific. They were interested in Saudi. They were interested in Egypt, and Emirates, of course, that interest. But, how do you do this when you're Malaysia only, you're doing this? So very interesting. The world is your oyster. It's absolutely everywhere. But you do need the funds to be able to fulfill your potential. And so that's where looking at this. And to do it quickly, you can do it organically. A wonderful company. I think it's had a good run, which is Job Street. They've been around 30 years. You may not realize it, but it's 30 years, not 30 weeks. They've been around 30 years, all right? So yeah, you can do this and wait another 30 years, but it's not how things happen now. You want to do this rapidly to take advantage, and I want to do this rapidly in order to bring benefit to people. Yeah, and to do this much, much faster. And you can do this. And then you just got to keep up. But really, it's actually keeping up, because once the runaway train goes, you are really moving at a very, very high speed, and that's okay. We are a .com, and as a result, understand what technology allows you to do. We don't need hundreds of paper pencil pushers doing this kind of stuff. You don't. Let the technology do the work. Let the tech scale.
Yeah, let the tech scale. Do the work. But at the same time, you brought out an interesting point. I think I probably have to borrow this from HSBC. It says the world's local bank. Yeah. Right. And it's so important is because a lot of people just expand. They don't think, yes, software is easy to expand, but they don't think about local regulations, local labor laws that are very different, and you gotta have a local team that supports, understand that nuance, and adapt. As you go. That for me is it's also. I think you're less regulated in terms of a bank, much less regulated. The banks will struggle because then you have you've got AMLA, KYC, PDPA, what the likes. But I like the point that you brought up in the sense that tech is scalable, but there's certain parts that is unscalable, needs the money, needs the runway, and you don't want to miss the boat because organic scaling will lead to sometimes, I would say, lost opportunities, for the lack of a better word. Okay, the next question I would have is that if you were to scale, do you foresee that the development, the scaling work still be concentrated within Malaysia? And if so, Yes. Or why? If not, then where would be your source of how you like develop the tech? I mean, my guess is the tech is like almost there. You probably have a very small DevOps team to like update. But is it right for me to assume that most of the tech has already been done? The framework is there. It's now just like localization of an international or regional presence.
Yeah, I mean the thing which is I felt very strongly about was that our Malaysian portal have a language alternative. So we have a BM button, a Bahasa Malaysia button, which is screamingly obvious, but actually the majority of portals don't. Okay? They don't have that. They expect everybody to do it in English, which is fine, no issue, because the theory is that if you are
White-collar worker.
if you're internet savvy, you should be able to speak English, which is fine. However, I go to the ATM machine, take cash, and it sounds bad. I'm not necessarily looking over somebody's shoulder, but I am looking over shoulder. And then the person, it's kind of market intelligence, right? You're doing market research, market intelligence, and the person in front of me punches in that they chose vernacular. The vernacular could be Chinese. The vernacular could be Malay. So why did they do that when they look like everybody else? Why don't they just do it in English? Because that's their preference. That's easiest for them. So if that is the case, why impose a barrier to greater use of the portal simply because you're not bothered to do a language alternative? Now, we have in ASEAN English. Singapore doesn't get the benefit of Chinese, so sorry. It's, we just could go to Singapore tomorrow, no problem. Philippines possibly, but the Philippines is very interested very English capable, but they like their Tagalog as well.
That's right.
So that is also Roman alphabet, so very easy to do. Then Indonesian, close enough to Malay. You look at this. Ooh, now you start to move into Indochina. Then you start to run into script. Okay. So you look at this. So there's another issue as well of having a localized team or somebody, you can find a Thai person in Malaysia to look at your Thai. You can, but it's a lot easier to find a Thai person in Thailand to look at your Thai, all right?
Correct.
So why should you not do that as well? Then you start moving further north. Oh no, but Malaysians can read Mandarin. But Malaysians don't speak the same Mandarin. So you get into all these kinds of things. So there are a lot of reasons why a slightly more local operation, and you were talking about a few people in a shared office, can still do wonders for your operation. That is the thing which is I think very valuable where you're looking at scaling. It's very simple. I think there are operations we see that raise huge amounts of money. And, I saw this company recently. It's a form of a likely competitor as such, in the sense that they work in the same employment, recruitment, HR kind of space. And they raised 25 million Sing dollars to open in 2 markets, in Vietnam and Thailand. And I said, no, sorry, 25 million US dollars. And I was like, my God, why would you need $25 million to do this? And I couldn't understand it. Then I looked at their business model. Their business model essentially is to do this. You log in and it says, if you need this, contact us. We'll send a consultant to see you. So what they're doing is very heavy on the human resource, very heavy on a consulting basis, which is why they need so much money, because they need big office, big people, and so on. You are missing the value of the net. You're missing the value of the fact that the net should allow you 24/7, 365 operation, right? It means that 3 a.m. in the midweek, Wednesday night, 3 a.m., if you're looking for a job, 3 a.m., you're looking for a worker, you can, because the system is there. Not because I have to wait until 9 a.m. for a consultant to come in and talk to me. So that is one of the things where you can see people are still missing out. But their charges are more. They charge more because the consultant can come and charge you for it, right? So I think these are different business models. Nothing wrong with that.
To each his own.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not our model. We want you to be able to find. So as a result, something that is very interesting is, what is our typical? We run a subscription model. So our we earn revenue from companies that basically pay a subscription to be able to access the system. But what do they look like? They are not SME, but MSME, which is micro, small, medium enterprises, because those are the companies where you knock on the door and the boss is there. And when you speak to the boss,
Hi, boss.
when you see the boss and owner is there, you talk to them about saving money, talk about efficiency, and all that stuff. They love it. It's straight away. Then the other end of the scale for us is multinationals. Oh my God, thank goodness. You know, we already do this in Germany. We're so happy to find you because now we have you here. Where the gap is in the middle. The middle where you have large Malaysian companies and they're like, no need lah. Okay? I mean, I did this with a company, which I won't name. We went through in excess of about 16 hours of meetings.
My goodness.
Okay? Now, our subscription is a very modest 10 ringgit a day. Okay, so
for the whole database, it's not.
So it's 10 ringgit a day, but you pay for the year. Okay, so
okay.
it's 3,600 for the year. So that's all we pay. So whether you use it once, you use it 1,000 times, it doesn't matter. That's what you pay. Okay, so let's just say that on the table is 3,600 ringgit. 16 hours of meeting. I did it as a courtesy because I knew the some of the people and everything else. At the end of it, the 16 hours, they sent an email and said, "Oh, we don't think we're ready for this." I think when you add up all the people who are involved with all those discussions,
the man hours already.
The cost of that was somewhere in space. I mean, it was just some crazy, because they were very high level of
probably their CFO, CTO, whatever.
But what was very interesting was it was going to shake their business, their organization to the core, and they said, we can't do this, because if we start hiring people on a kind of like in and out basis, it's just going to freak everybody out. Yeah, but you know, they started off speaking to me about the fact they had already hit the maximum headcount, but the headcount that they have couldn't do the things they wanted to do.
Okay.
So wait a minute, you open that door, when you say this, the way to do it is to, well, you're going to hire a consultant, a consulting firm, but it's going to cost you 1,000 times more, you know? And so it doesn't really make sense. So there is that gap in the middle where I look at this and I say, it's absolutely fine, because there are 4 million registered companies in Malaysia. I don't have to go for 3 million of them.
Yeah.
If I get 1 million of them, it would already be amazing, right?
Correct.
So that's not necessary. But I love the little guys, again, you know, the micro, small, medium enterprise. Those, all the taukes and everybody else, you talk to them about saving them money. You talk about the fact that they don't have to hire people forever. You
don't need to have extra function. You don't need to have HR. You don't need to have this. You don't need the onboarding person.
Yeah, we do all that. We do all that through the system. So they love it, and that's tremendously beneficial. And it's very exciting for us. You know, you look at this and it's really helping the economy. Because there was not a way for them to easily do it before. That was the key. The key was, I mean, you pass, I walk down the street and I pass doors where there's a sign on the glass that says Jawatan Kosong, it says help wanted, and you go, sorry, I don't know who is passing here to see this, right? But now you're giving them access to the net, and then it's, 10 ringgit a day. So, okay, your little company, 10 ringgit a day, but how many times are you using this over the course of the year? And if you do it well, and these companies get smart because they're really smart about how they do these things, very quickly they see the payback is there. So that's been very, very rewarding.
Yeah. Actually, if you think about it, 3,006, right? You hire, usually, I don't know, has it changed? I mean, you guys are in the industry, I'm not. When you have a referral, you know, employee referral, and then they bring in, usually it's the 1 month of the guy's salary, you know, usually like, I don't know whether it works.
It can be more. There are some firms, obviously, the more senior you are, the more costly it is.
Correct.
So, you know, if you're a CEO, I've heard of 12 months of a CEO's pay as the search fee.
Correct.
And sometimes but a month is not unusual. 3 months is quite common.
That's the point I'm trying to make, because you're paying 3,006. And if you get, let's say, someone like your uncle accountant, and he's there to guide or groom, because I know this happens. I mean, there are certain business networks, and what they do now, you know what they're getting? They're getting a search of young business startups that don't know how to run like an adult organization. They have a business idea, great, you know,
Right.
tenacity to start an entrepreneurship journey, but they need a senior guiding hand, like
Right.
a CFO
Right.
or a senior CDO with the experience, right? And what they're getting is they're getting into these business networks to get coaching.
Right.
And I draw a parallel at adjacent space and says, why don't we get, through MakeTimePay, you bring in a CFO for 6 months. Your role is not to be the CFO. Your role is to groom the next CFO. And he's probably at 70. He also is probably lonely, wants to talk to someone and guide someone. You never know, there could be a reason.
Yeah, I mean, I say this. We have currently on our books, or at least at last look, there are 6 former CEOs. I don't know them, by the way. I know them now because I send them emails and ask them in an exercise of market research. Sorry, what are you trying to do? And they are in their mid to late 50s, and their point was they said they have been CEOs. They're not currently running an organization, but they have found it very difficult because the higher you go, the fewer positions are available. But it doesn't mean that they're not smart, they're not experienced, they're not all those kinds of stuff. And they're quite happy. They want to keep their hand in, they want to be able to help out. They're not trying to enrich themselves because they're already quite comfortable, but they want to be able to be involved. So they said, don't know how to be exposed to opportunity. And so the way they did it, they said, we just, it doesn't cost us anything. So they just registered, which is great. The other one, which was quite funny, was the system kicked up a name. And the names or whatever you put down is your name, right? There's a Dato. And he was looking for board positions.
Ah.
Okay. So he said, look, I'm available, right? And I have been a board member. I am a board member, all this kind of stuff. So how do I get it known to not necessarily the largest companies in the country, because there are 4 million companies, right?
Yeah.
So how could I be on a board of a small company where I can lend, these are people giving back. At the moment, the numbers are small, right? Six CEOs and one Dato. The numbers are small. But what happens if it gets really big?
Yeah.
Why should you not be a depository of all of these types of people, their brain trust and everything else for that opportunity? Then, as you know, hey, I'm looking for a board member. Why should I not find one there? That's great, and we allow that to grow, and that makes it very exciting. I think there is reward for all.
Yeah.
Can't afford it. You haven't started the conversation. Start the conversation, then decide whether you can afford it.
Correct.
So that's from that side unintended. So when you say word of mouth. Yeah, interesting word of mouth.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I really don't know. If they were my friends, I would say, oh, these are my friends. But I don't know these people.
Okay.
So it's great. And if you look at their background, their profiles, it looks legitimate. It's not people who claim to be, but they look legitimate.
It's not fluff. Put it this way.
Yeah.
It's not fluff. Yeah. Interesting. Probably last 1 or 2 questions. One is, if you talk about financing, and because you're in the midst of raising money, you talk about financing, getting the word out, and getting a factual story of how big MakeTimePay can grow. Has it been more nays and disappointments rather than more yeses in the belief that it can actually scale from either the ecosystem, the financing people?
My role. No, of course, I have many roles, but it is my responsibility to raise money, and it's. I think it will always be an eternal thing. If you want to do it quickly, you have no choice except to raise money. Organically is hard, even for a runaway business. You want to then capitalize on that runaway, and you're still back to raising money and so on. So that sits with me. So I have been, I think from day one, we were raising money, looking to raise money, and it was a challenge where established institutions would say, "Oh, we'll wait for you to kick off." Then we kicked off, and then they said, "We'll wait for you to gain some traction." So when you start to gain some traction, they go, well, we need to see you make some profit. So I think it's not a. We're very excited. I mean, I love the business. I love what we're trying to do. You know, I love the mission, obviously. But it's not as it's not trendy. What's trendy? You know, for a moment, NFT was trendy. Blockchain is to a certain extent trendy. You look at crypto is trendy. Web3 is trendy. When you look at all of those things, if you are none of those, then get in line with people who are just solving problems through traditional, possibly established means. What I will say is there is no other gig employment marketplace in Malaysia. There are in some parts of the world, but even if we go Asia-wide, one doesn't exist. And if that is the case, you are very clearly filling a gap. So why are there not more believers? And I think that it's very challenging because the climate is very cautious. I think investors are very cautious. I will credit an investor that we have. Okay, he's a 5% shareholder. His name is Simon Landshear.
Okay,
Simon is Dutch. He lives in Kuala Lumpur. He has businesses through Southeast Asia. He was our first investor for 5%, and he is, I guess, he's a professional investor, and he saw the potential, understood, and immediately gave us a massive valuation, and we have been very appreciative of that. But in that regard, he's a visionary.
But he's also an outlier. That's the thing, is it right?
Yeah. So, but he's an interesting guy because he sees that opportunity, and he has let 1,000 flowers bloom. Right? He is invested in all sorts of stuff, and he looks at this, and he's not invested in anything competing, but he's always been there. He's always been present and is standing by. And we want to make this good, both not just for ourselves, but for him as well. Institutions, I think, locally struggle a little bit because they are still very cautious, and that's fine. It's fine in the sense that we heard for a very long time. People are still stinging from the experience of Grab. As we know, Grab tried to get investment in Malaysia for a long time, failed to do so, went to Singapore and got fully invested within a week, that type of thing. And I'm Malaysian, my partners are Malaysian except Simon, and Simon has 5%, Simon is Dutch. But we would like to be, but eventually if this market will not, then we will go with whoever will, because investors allow you to do what you want to do. They don't actually want to drive the business. No. A good investor doesn't actually want to be involved with you operationally. They don't. They just want you to do what you say you're going to do. So if an investor has, and we have had, I will say, a lot of interest. We've had more interest from non-Malaysia based potentials, and even if I can say this, a New York Stock Exchange company was interested as an extension of their current business, which was really a bit of a surprise because I was like, what?
But they saw the adjacent space, right?
Yeah, they saw that, and that was a real surprise for me. So the world is a big place, but it requires a lot of work to chase these organizations.
I understand.
I think that my consciousness is clear. I have made every effort locally, and it's hard. And if it doesn't work, then it's okay.
Yeah.
I've done it, and we'll do something else and see what is required. Yeah.
Actually, it kind of draws parallel to the earlier part of the podcast conversation where we talked about employment loyalty whatsoever, and have like a 5-year plan. You go to MBA school and they ask you to come up with a business plan, and then the next thing you know, you chuck it into the bin. I mean as an entrepreneur, like what you exactly said, how naive I was that when I got into the job in Shell, and I thought, I bought a big house, right? And I thought it was that's it. I'm set for life. 35 years later, get my medal for like long service at work, right? Never even a hint of what I'm going to do today. And I think in your case as an entrepreneur, about funding, about the next step or whatever, I think you can only plan for so far. I think, and just open yourself up to the opportunities, and just weigh the risk and reward, and then just take it from there. Probably the last question for you, Shahryn, is this: if someone else, like perhaps even a younger family member of you, come up and says, "Hey, dad or uncle or like Dato' Shahryn, maybe one day, right? I want to start a business," and you seem to have like found the formula for it. What would that be, and what were the things that, if you could rewind and do better at it, or do you have no regrets? Like in hindsight, you don't want to use the benefit of hindsight. What are the things that, through your journey of MakeTimePay and the pain points that you had, what would you have done differently?
I think hindsight always allows you to plan perfectly, because you see where all the errors are. For the most part, I think the difference between myself and my partners is we're not 20 years old.
Not spring chicken, right?
Yeah. So we've done this now. That doesn't mean we cannot make mistakes. We can, but those mistakes possibly are more human related as opposed to strategic or tactical. And by human related means that you may entrust an individual to do something they say they were going to do, and then they don't do it. But that is wishful thinking rather than anything else. You wish that they had followed through, and they were the wrong people to do it. So that is the issue. You cannot go through that again and not choose the same person again, because the basis of choosing that person was good at the time, and then you discovered they weren't going to follow through only afterwards. But I would say this about starts, if there are people considering startups, people who have just started up, which is, don't give up, because my partners and I, very often they will, and myself, I won't talk about them, but certainly there will be times when you sit and you feel that you are completely insane. You just say, what on earth have I done? What am I doing? This is so stressful, whatever. And then the next morning you wake up and it's a new world, and you
go again.
Yeah, you go again.
Yeah.
And not every job is like that. But the thing is, we feel that it has value. I'm very mission oriented. I think it's very worthwhile. But you've just got to keep slogging on, because it's the courage of your convictions. You look at this now. Why is that different if you're 60 versus 20? Because you know more, you've done more, you see more, your perspective is different. And if your perspective is different, it means that you are prepared to consider alternatives. And we haven't pivoted. We've started playing with like this, all along the way. But if anything, people who haven't got that experience would probably be less flexible, or arguably less committed, those things. Not always the case, but that's the challenge. So I would say don't give up. Very easy, for instance, having had the experience that we've had locally with potential investors, to say, the heck with this, I couldn't get the Malaysian investment, and close shop. But that's suddenly when you discover, wait a minute, this is from where? This is, literally, I did a video call one night with this, the head of strategy for this company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And I was like, why are we doing this? It was just so unexpected, so out of left field. And so it's there. You have that opportunity. You just have to find that connection. But you have to work at it. You have to work at it.
It doesn't fall in your lap.
It doesn't. You work at it. And then that gives you go, I wonder if there's another organization that might want to do this. And it allows you to then push on. But that is the key. But it's draining, it's tiring, and you have to believe.
Yeah.
Because if you won't believe, goodness knows nobody else will.
No one's. The conviction only can come from inner.
That's right.
Yeah.
But your users will not believe if you don't believe, because you're just not committed enough to make the effort to listen to them and everything else. So that's the only thing I would say is don't give up. There are if not this route, then another route.
Fantastic advice. I would love to go on, to be honest. I mean, we've been having a conversation even before this podcast, and I'm like, hang on, don't tell me now, you can't tell me. But Shahryn, it's been an absolute pleasure.
My pleasure, Theon. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope the audience, I have definitely gained a lot of insight, especially about how certain things viewed from a different angle, especially about the Nordstrom story, can really change your perspective about things. For the audience out there, I'm pretty sure if you're like a multi-billionaire or multi-millionaire that, probably see potential like what Simon has, Shahryn is definitely available to always, right? You can give him a blank check, even better, right? But I know. I hope you guys have benefited from this. I've benefited from this. If you want to reach out to Shahryn, I'm going to put the contact in the link below. If you like content like this as well, subscribe, give us a feedback. Do you think that Shahryn's idea is too radical, or is it something that's really necessary? I mean, Malaysian pay gap, I'm pretty sure you heard of it, right? I would see it's almost an adjacent space. It's underemployment and all that kind of thing. So hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and share it with like-minded individuals so that you and I can actually grow and learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Shahryn.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Thank you.